Risk management is one of the most consistently tested topics on the entire PMP exam. It appears in Domain 2 as Task 3, but risk thinking runs through almost every domain and every scenario question you will face. In this video, I'll break down Task 3 completely, the 6 enablers, the full risk cycle from identification through monitoring, the critical distinction between threats and opportunities, and how Agile teams handle risk differently. I'll finish with a practice question. If you master risk management, you master a significant portion of the exam. Let's get into it. Task 3 sits in Domain 2. Process 50% of the exam. The task statement is, assess and manage risks. There are 6 enablers. First, determine risk management options. Second, iteratively assess and prioritize risks. Third, identify and analyze both threats and opportunities. Fourth, determine escalation of risks. Fifth, implement risk responses. Sixth, monitor risk responses for effectiveness. 6 enablers covering the complete risk lifecycle. The exam tests all 6, but particularly the distinction between threats and opportunities, and the appropriate response strategies for each. Before the enablers, one distinction the exam tests on almost every risk question. A risk is uncertain. It may or may not happen. It lives in the future. The project manager plans responses in advance and monitors for early warning signs. An issue is a risk that has materialized. It is happening now or has already happened. Issues go into the issue log and require immediate response, not planning. On the exam, when a scenario describes something that might happen, it is a risk. When it describes something that is happening, it is an issue. The correct action is different for each. Treating an issue as a risk, planning a response instead of acting now, is a common wrong answer. The first enabler is determine risk management options. Before identifying individual risks, the project manager establishes the overall approach to risk management for the project. This includes determining the risk appetite of the organization and key stakeholders. How much uncertainty are they willing to accept in pursuit of value? A risk-tolerant sponsor accepts more uncertainty for higher potential return. A risk-averse sponsor requires more mitigation, even at higher cost. The risk management approach is documented in the risk management plan, part of the overall project management plan. On the exam, questions about risk appetite and risk thresholds connect to this enabler. The PM does not decide the organization's risk appetite. They identify it and plan accordingly. The second enabler is iteratively assess and prioritize risks. Risk assessment is not a one-time planning activity. It is continuous throughout the project lifecycle. Assessment uses 2 dimensions. Probability, how likely is the risk to occur? And impact if it occurs, how significantly does it affect the project's objectives? Risks are prioritized by combining these 2 dimensions. High probability and high impact risks receive the most attention and resources. The probability and impact matrix is the primary tool tested for this enabler. On the exam, you may be asked to rank risks or determine which should be addressed first. Always prioritize by combined probability impact, not by probability alone or impact alone. The third enabler is identify and analyze both threats and opportunities. This is one of the most tested distinctions in risk management on the exam. Most candidates think of risk as negative, a threat to the project. PMI defines risk as any uncertain event that could affect project objectives, positively or negatively. Opportunities are positive risks, uncertain events that, if they occur, benefit the project. Response strategies differ between threats and opportunities. For threats, avoid, transfer, mitigate, or accept. For opportunities, exploit, share, enhance, or accept. On the exam, any question about an uncertain event with a potential positive outcome is an opportunity question. The correct response strategy comes from the opportunity column, not the threat column. Let's go through each strategy. For threats, avoid. Change the plan to eliminate the risk entirely. Transfer. Shift the financial impact to a third party through insurance or contract. Mitigate. Reduce the probability or impact before the risk occurs. Accept. Acknowledge the risk and decide not to act unless it occurs, either actively with a contingency plan or passively without one. For opportunities, exploit. Take action to ensure the opportunity definitely occurs. Share. Partner with another party better positioned to capture the opportunity. Enhance. Increase the probability or impact of the positive event. Accept. Be willing to take advantage of the opportunity if it occurs without actively pursuing it. The exam tests which strategy matches which scenario. Read carefully. The key word in the scenario points to the correct strategy. The fourth enabler is determine escalation of risks. Not all risks are within the project manager's authority to manage. Some risks, because of their magnitude, their organizational implications, or their cross-project impact, must be escalated to a higher level of authority. On the exam, escalation is the correct response when a risk exceeds the project manager's risk threshold, the level of impact beyond which the PM does not have authority to respond independently. Escalated risks are removed from the project risk register and transferred to the appropriate organizational level: program manager, portfolio manager, or executive sponsor. The PM is still responsible for monitoring and communicating, but the response authority shifts. This is one of the few contexts on the PMP exam where escalation is the correct first action. The fifth enabler is implement risk responses. Planned risk responses only deliver value when they are actually executed. Risk response implementation requires that risk owners, the team members or stakeholders assigned responsibility for each risk, carry out the agreed responses according to the risk management plan. The project manager monitors that responses are implemented on schedule and that risk owners have the resources they need. On the exam, a common scenario describes a risk that was identified and planned for, but whose response was never implemented because everyone assumed someone else would handle it. The correct PMI answer ensures that every risk has a designated owner and that implementation is tracked. Plans that exist only on paper deliver zero risk reduction. The sixth enabler is monitor risk responses for effectiveness. Implementing a risk response does not end the risk management process. The PM monitors whether the response is working as intended. Monitoring risk responses involves tracking whether planned mitigation is reducing probability or impact as expected, whether contingency plans are still appropriate given current project conditions, whether new risks have emerged as a result of implemented responses, called secondary risks, and whether the overall risk exposure of the project is trending up or down. On the exam, risk monitoring questions test whether the PM continues to manage risks throughout execution, not just at the planning stage. Any answer that treats risk as a planning-only activity is wrong. In Agile environments, risk management is embedded in the delivery rhythm rather than managed as a separate process. Short sprints are themselves a risk management tool. By delivering working software frequently, the team gets early feedback and reduces the risk of building the wrong thing. The shorter the iteration, the faster risks are surfaced and resolved. Risk is discussed in sprint planning. Daily stand-up surface new risks as they emerge, and retrospectives identify process risks that affected the last sprint. The product backlog is also a risk management tool. High-risk items are prioritized earlier to reduce uncertainty. On the exam, Agile risk questions test whether you understand that risk is managed continuously in Agile, not documented once and revisited at predetermined intervals. 3 traps on task 3 questions. Trap 1. Treating issues as risks. When something has already happened, it is an issue. Act now. Do not plan a response. The exam describes the current state carefully. Read whether the event is certain or uncertain. Trap 2. Ignoring opportunities. When a scenario describes an uncertain positive event, the correct response comes from the opportunity strategy column. Candidates who only think of risk as negative miss these questions entirely. Trap 3. Escalating risk prematurely. Escalation is correct when a risk exceeds the PM's threshold, not as a first response to any difficult risk. Most risks are managed within the project. Escalation is the exception, not the rule. Let's test your understanding. Question. During project execution, a project manager identifies that a new technology could significantly reduce the project's remaining development time if adopted. The adoption is uncertain. It depends on whether the technology integrates successfully with existing systems. What should the project manager do? Option A. Ignore the technology since it was not in the original project plan. Option B. Log the uncertain event as an opportunity in the risk register, assess its probability and potential impact, and determine an appropriate response strategy. Option C. Implement the new technology immediately to take advantage of the potential time saving. Option D. Escalate the decision to the project sponsor since it involves a change to the project approach. The correct answer is B. This is a textbook opportunity scenario. An uncertain event with a potential positive outcome, reduced development time, is a positive risk. The correct response is to log it in the risk register, assess it using probability and impact, and determine the appropriate opportunity response strategy. Exploit if you want to ensure it happens. Enhance if you want to increase its probability. Accept if you are willing to benefit if it occurs naturally. Why not A? Ignoring an identified opportunity is passive risk avoidance. The PM is responsible for managing both threats and opportunities. Why not C? Implementing immediately without assessment skips the analysis and planning that risk management requires, and implementing an unplanned technology change without going through change control also violates process. Why not D? The uncertain event is within the project manager's scope to assess and plan for. Escalation is not the first step for a manageable opportunity. B follows the correct risk management process. That is your complete guide to PMP domain. 2 Task 3. Assess and manage risks. Subscribe for more PMP exam prep. Next up, engage stakeholders. Domain 2, Task 4 explained. See you in the next video.